3, 4.
We moved here in 1971, across the street into a little house that my husband renovated. We put an ad in the advance saying, for rent consideration, we'll do work, we'll fix up. And we got a whole bunch of people that wanted us to do that, and we ended up coming here onto Broad Street. And at that time, my husband worked at a display place right on Tompkins Avenue. So it was extremely convenient. Yeah, well, I was also teaching in this neighborhood for a number of years at the public school and at the intermediate school. So the neighborhood, when I first moved in, was completely different. Bears no resemblance. The street, Broad Street, had only little houses, and in the middle of there's a whole bunch of new development that's come in. That's very nice. But there was a teeny little black barber shop, and it was really sort of southern here. We liked it. It was quite different from having come from California and Brooklyn Heights. And I loved it here. It does have the wonderful convenience of being close to the ferry and close to the bridge. It was not quite what it was when my husband grew up here, where the town of Stapleton was the neighborhood place. Everybody came here and you drove your cars around and you waved and you stopped and you spoke to people. It wasn't quite that, but it was still a very active, there was stores all around. There were restaurants, there was a lot of activity. And that went really downhill. And I think that the Navy coming in had a lot to do with that. So property around the park that people had been sort of renovating on their own and had little apartments and businesses sold out to developers, and that never happened because the Navy never really came here. So it's been a long time that I've been involved in sort of the renaissance of Stapleton, but it hasn't quite come yet. Whether I will actually be alive to see it is another question. Preservation had promised us the Harrison Street Nook and the area down here to bring the two neighborhoods together. They didn't do it at that time. A number of years later and a number of years ago, they came back to us that they wanted to make it into a historic district because people flock to a historic district as they do in St. George. So I think that people came here because there was breathing space, because there were trees, because they felt it was a nice place to raise children, and because they themselves wanted a yard, they wanted a garden, they wanted a home. In exchange for that, you travel for 2 hours to get to the city, for an hour and a half to get to the city. And no matter what you put up or what you do, you cannot get away from that fact. So after, in the later 70s, the business section was no longer a place that everybody came, but it was still useful. People came here, and it was very alive. And we had businesses. The Staten Island Bank had a huge building there on Beach Street, and that was all filled with workers. All those workers ate in the neighborhood, all those people walked around the neighborhood. Certainly the area around the park has been very devastated, and it doesn't look anywhere near as good as it did when I came in. And what's going on at Irby is terrific, and it's a lot of young people. This was sort of a bohemian, Stapleton has always been hip. It's always cool to live here. It still is cool to live here. No question about that. And I do think that Makerspace has been terrific for this community, and it has brought people from all over.